Close your door.
Hello, we are live.
Hey, we're live. How's it going? I'm telling Gary to close his door because his team is getting wild and crazy and making too much noise.
That does
So,
happen.
how's it going?
Everything is going great. How's it going with you guys?
It's a little bit busy. It's pretty good though.
Yeah,
We're doing great.
man,
Doing good.
man, we are getting, we are so busy. I think everybody's getting ready for Super Bowl, and with the warmer weather, guess what? Everybody's trying to do. We talked about it last month. They're trying to use their pits because there's so many people. I've had people come by asking me if they could buy some wood. I've had people come by asking me what they should do. You know, it is. You can really tell the barbecue culture here in the Pacific Northwest is really alive.
Yeah, all of a sudden they want to drag their grill out and hope that it's clean and sanitary so they don't kill their family.
Well, just as long as it's safe. I'll start with safe, right?
Yeah, let's start
I
with
hate
safe
those.
and not poisoning people.
Yeah, but we talk through all that kind of stuff because things like filling up those bottles and stuff like that, they can always be a real Debbie Downer when you're trying to get out there and get the hot dogs done. You know what I mean?
Yep, for sure. You want to have your supplies in order. So today we wanted to talk about the history of barbecue because that's something you're passionate about. If you ask 10 barbecue pitmasters about the history of barbecue, how many answers do you get? Like
You get
probably
10.
10 or 11 or 12. So Gary's answer is that barbecue in America is as old as smoke, spice, and thyme. So Gary,
It
why
is.
is barbecue as old as smoke, spice, and thyme?
Well, if you look at it, and like I said, I think we've gone over this before. There's a lot of different references. I focus particularly in two areas, one of which is the biblical context of it, right? You can go all the way back into the Old Testament with Mosaic law, right? In that section
Hmm.
of the Bibles, and where it's very specific about. Well, they don't talk about barbecue as we define it today. Very specific, details about the animals, the how to build the what they use, their grill, their what I don't know what they called it, right? They had a name for it, um, and and how to prepare it and which animals you could do. It starts in there. You come all the way through at a very similar time frame with stuff in Roman history. You come forward into the 16th century with barbecue. It starts to become more understandable in barbecue, and we bring that all forward through the founding of this country, through the two migrational paths that are east to west, and where we pick up, the southern route picks up so much of the Jamaican influence, out of the deep south, and the north, kind of stays a little bit more pure to the European side, right? And what they're after, but yeah, it's a rich, multi-thousand year history if you really go looking hard and look for the references. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the South and the North are different, and the North is the North more mild in taste, and the South spicier by chance.
No, well, I would say the South is spicier because it picks up so much of the Jamaican influence, right?
Hmm.
When Cortez and all those guys came through and they brought those cooking techniques into what was, the Florida and the Gulf Coast, lanes, right?
Hmm.
Because they had to eat every day too, and hunting and fishing and cooking over fire was what they were all about, right? That's how they fed themselves, and those flavors that came out of the path that they took from Spain through Jamaica all the way into Florida and the Gulf Coast. They all picked up, and then they got introduced into that southern migration flow. Northern side, it stayed mainly European, but of course European cooking and stuff like that's largely based out of the 16th century, right? And so a lot of those flavors, and you know I like to say, have their roots back in that time frame.
So I think the other thing attached to barbecue that people don't realize is that smoked and salted meats were the first techniques for preservation, and so.
Yep.
Is that related at all? Is that how we got to spicy meats? Is for just or
Well, I
salty
think
meat for
I think the two
preservation?
blended. I actually think the two blended because you remember there's no refrigerators to the late 1800s. All
Mm-hmm.
right, so we've had 300 years of doing this, right? You couldn't just go make it fresh every day, right? Because these animals were huge and they didn't have much, so they didn't want to waste anything. So
Sure.
you had to preserve these meats. So salting, and we still do that. If you've ever watched one of your TV shows on how to make bacon, that's really the first thing they do is they take the pork belly, right, and they pack it in salt. And the reason they're doing that is they're drawing all that moisture out. No moisture, no bacteria. The meat stays, right. And so salt is a big deal. Um, and just for drawing the moistures out of meats, right? Then pepper is really just a flavor technique, right?
Yeah, it just well, so was salt more for preservation necessity and
Preservation.
pepper was
Yeah,
for flavor? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you hear the words still. There's still people that say what is salt pork and so on and so forth, right? Well, that's salted pork is what it was,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Interesting.
it had so much salt. It basically had all the water pulled out of it, right?
Yeah. So today we have these backyard grills, and you have this huge oven in your, back of your kitchen, in your restaurant. So we've definitely evolved in how we cook barbecue. But what was cooking barbecue like in the early days? Was it digging
Um,
a hole and throwing some rocks in there, or what was
now
that
you know
about?
why now you know why you got the word pit. Go dig a hole in the ground. Build a fire in it.
Interesting. Yeah.
You know, and you see this a lot if you go to the again. I'm going to start with the southeast, um, where everybody likes to and even Hawaii's a lot this way. They want to bury it, right? They dig the big hole in the ground, the pit. They build the big fire. They get the coals. They throw a bunch of rock in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they build an insulated layer that they can then lay the the pig or what have you there, and then cover it with leaves, and you know put more dirt and stuff over the top of it. Just make an oven out of the ground. You know,
Wow. So
and
interesting.
I wish I had the pictures I could show you too. Is the other way they do it is they would dig a big long trench if there was going to be a big feed. These guys would go out and they just dig this big 3 or 4 foot deep trench, and they build a fire, the whole thing. And when all that got to be a coal bed, they would just put whatever it was that were going to cook across that coal bed, right? And you still see that technique along. If you go down and see, particularly in the southeast, you see that a lot with the guys that are doing the whole hogs and stuff like that. They still do it that way.
So they dig a hole and they put rocks in, and what's
Yeah,
the
big
next
coal
layer?
bed, and they get the rocks in there to hold the heat.
Uh-huh.
And then more fire usually, and then they can either cook over that or they can bury it.
Nice. Wow. That's crazy to think of a hole in your backyard and that's how you do barbecue. I think I prefer a grill. So,
Good for you.
barbecue means beef, particularly brisket. I didn't know that. In the Carolinas, the whole South for that matter, barbecue means pork, typically
Okay.
shoulder roasts and Boston butts. What the
Yep.
heck? So
And
barbecue
why?
means different things depending on what country you're in or what part of the country you're in.
What part of the country in? And you know why that is? That gets back to the migration piece of what was going on. So, what did you have in abundance, right, in the southeast? Again, in the
Hmm.
southern influence with the Spanish coming in, they could carry the pigs on the boat. So they picked up the pigs. The pigs would, they left some behind. The pigs multiply. You had a lot of pork in the southeast and all the way up the eastern seaboard. That's what they had.
Interesting.
Pork was easy to transport when we built the north and the south rail systems, right? Because the pigs could move along with the rail workers, right, and be slaughtered and cooked. So
Hmm.
pork has a huge influence. Yardbird has a big, or chicken rather,
Hmm.
it has a huge influence on barbecue just because of the portability of it all. You get over into states like Texas, Kansas City, Chicago, where you had the big cattle drives going on, it switches into beef, right? And that's because that's what I mean. They still do. We still do a lot of pork in those areas because
Hmm.
they're just as available. But you had these massive cows, right? And you could slaughter a 2,000 pound cow and feed a lot of people. So
So
you know,
what barbecue refers to is highly dependent on what's available in the area, whether it be
What's
yard
available in
bird,
the area.
chicken, beef,
Right.
pig.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, so here in Gig Harbor, are we beef, chicken, or pork? Or are we all of it?
Fish. Really the meat over fire concepts of here were done by the Indians, and it was smoking salmon. And they did the exact same thing. There's lots of pictures
Mm-hmm.
of this. You see it.
Mm-hmm.
The Indians would dig that big trench in the ground, build that big fire full of alder coals, and they would take the western red cedar because they have those long limbs, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they would kind of slit them down the middle so that they were kind of formed an old fashioned clothespin, if you will. And they would
Mm-hmm.
put those salmon fillets right in that slot over those cedar limbs, and they would put them at an angle over the top of those coals, and
Mm-hmm.
just sit there and spin them, right, and until the fish got done. So that's probably for the Pacific Northwest. That's the most prevalent that I've discovered in my research. But um, and then as time moved on, our classic, like Texas barbecue, Carolina barbecue, Kansas City barbecue, all made its way up here.
Wow. So maybe your next growth for barbecue to you is barbecue salmon to you. I kind of like that. I know lots of Gig
Yeah,
Harbor people that would love that. Very
yeah,
fun.
we thought about it. We thought about doing it sometimes, but I have a fear against fish allergies, and believe it or not, a lot of people have them, and so I haven't done fish in this restaurant because I can't afford to cross contaminate the grills and stuff like that because of and some of the more severe allergies I've seen have been fish allergies. So I mean, they're really deadly. In my
Yeah. So you
so anyway,
need to
I've got
be
a natural
totally.
fear against those, and so if
Yeah.
I was going to do a fish, I go do a fish place. That way,
Yeah.
people with fish allergies could stay away, right?
Be separate. Yep. Yeah. Be
Yeah,
interesting though. And I've never connected salmon with the history of barbecue, but it makes sense that it is absolutely connected because it's based on the meat that's available in the area.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Interesting.
As is flavors, right? So,
Yeah. So can you talk about don't you have Louisiana style ribs and what makes those special?
um, well, I don't really don't do any Louisiana. Louisiana style is mostly blackened. When they do their thing, I don't really do a lot of that. I certainly don't do it here for the store.
I thought you
Um,
had something that was non-traditional in for ribs. Maybe not.
No, not really. Ribs are ribs, pork ribs are pork ribs, right? And we, sometimes we get fancy and we'll lather them in our sauce and kind of make a sweet rib out of it. But for the most part, we just do a straight smoked, pork rib with
Mm-hmm.
we just do just a little bit of salt and pepper, not very much.
Mm-hmm.
And unlike we're not trying to make bark on it like we do the brisket. We just add just a little bit on there, a little bit of salt to pull some of the moisture up, and then a little bit of pepper just to have a little bit of a pop to it.
Yeah. So for pork, you have the ribs, you have the pulled pork,
Yep.
and for brisket, you've
For
got
the
brisket
poultry, we do the
sandwiches.
chicken and the turkey, right? For
Mm-hmm.
the beef, we do the beef ribs and the brisket, right?
Mm-hmm. Wow, it's a huge variety. And are you cooking all of that fresh every day, or is it
Every
just the
day,
brisket?
7 meats a day.
So you navigate your oven around chicken, pork, and beef.
Yeah.
Does that all happen
Yeah,
at
we
once,
split it.
or do they have?
We split it into soft meats versus long term meats. So that's the reason briskets always go on early, right? So
Mhm.
a lot of people are still sleeping when briskets go on,
Sure.
right? And so they're
That's the
first, and they
marketing
get the
people. We
quality.
are never sleep.
They uh, they get the quality time on the pit. And they'll go all day long. They'll go from probably 8 o'clock to 7 o'clock. You know, um, and then but all through the day, we're putting loads of pork and chicken, soft meat stuff on there, sausage, so on and so forth. So that'll only stay on there a few hours, and then we'll pull it back, right? And of course, in my videos that we've done, why we can go so fast. It's because of the way we prep those meats and stuff. It makes it really easy to cook fast on them, which we need to do because we put out tons and tons and tons of meat, on
A
each one of
lot
them.
of volume every day.
A lot of volume every day. Yeah.
Yes, it's a very interesting thing to watch. Gary's day begins very, very early, and it begins with a lot of raw meat, very large pieces of brisket, and tons of chicken and sausage. And preparing that and all the salting and spicing that goes into it, and then getting it on the grill on time so that when you show up for dinner, it's, hasn't been cooked, 2 days ago, but it's fresh. There's a lot that goes on very early in the day to get you your lunch and your dinner. Would you agree?
That's absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the reason I
That's
have
why you
bags
don't
under my
ever,
eyes.
that's what I was going to say. That's why you don't ever text, call, or bother Gary about barbecue on your day off, because
Nope, because I won't answer.
yep. And it's good that you don't. So, well, this has been really interesting. I've definitely learned something today. And I appreciate your insights on the history of barbecue. If you're watching today and you want to read more about these parts of the history of barbecue, you'll find this content on Gary's website, which is barbecue to Texas, barbecue2u.com, Texas, bbq2u.com, all spelled out.
Yeah, you'll
We'd
get it.
love to have you order one of these pieces of meat and let us know what you think. Visit our social media and give us comments or reviews. We always love feedback from people.
So, what we want to know, you forget the other one we talked about. Um, we want to know your barbecue story. Um, we want to know what you remember in your family, right? About barbecue, right? I'm trying to collect and find a set of stories. It's because so many people don't know, right? And that's really why I really want to encourage people to help me get this out. And because our grandparent, people my age, I'm 60, right? So our grandparents and stuff, they lived through a lot of these things that we just talked about, but and they passed some of that on to their kids, right? So as late baby boomers, we all have very specific story. It's really interesting when you ask somebody, tell me what you remember about barbecue when you're growing up, right? And you can really see them, it's really see it bring back some really, deep thought, deep memories, kind of things, right? And they almost always tell a great story, right? And the things you remember, the things that you saw, the things that you associate with those times, right? And it's all, to me, it's all getting lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really, what I'm trying to do is get us late baby boomers to get together and share our stories, and maybe do a collection of stories that we can then use for telling the kids what it's like, and maybe we can keep a little bit of this history alive going forward.
Yep, for sure. I agree. It's a great idea. So if you want to submit your story or memories about barbecue growing up, you can do that on the social media pages on Instagram and Facebook. You can also visit the website and email Gary there, or you can email him directly at gparker@texasbbq2u.com. Thanks
There
for
you
listening, everyone, and we'll see you again next month. Anything else you want to throw in here, Gary, before we wrap up?
go. Just come on in and grab some Q.
Sounds
We
good.
got
Thanks,
plenty.
Gary.
See ya.